Sonic the Hedgehog CD is a weird Sonic game. It's definitely not the most obscure Sonic game given the important things it introduced, but when people talk about the classic Sonic games, it tends to get lost in the shuffle. It's got a very distinct feel, with the zones pretty different from any other Sonic in their designs and layouts, plus the whole time travel gimmick. So I thought I'd take a little retrospective look at this classic Sonic middle child by ranking every single zone from Sonic CD. I'm honestly not the biggest fan of this game, but there are some pretty unique stuff here. I have videos ranking the zones of Sonic Mania, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and the whole Advanced trilogy, so if you're interested, check those out as well, although it's not necessary for your enjoyment of this video. I'd also appreciate if you could subscribe, as I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2025. Thank you. I'll be ranking each zone in this video based on how fun it is overall, how fun the visuals look, and how it stays true to Sonic's design philosophies. There's one big problem when it comes to ranking these zones though, and that is the time travel gimmick. Basically, every zone has 4 versions: past, present, bad future, and good future. I'm going to be approaching each zone from the perspective of a casual playthrough, meaning it mostly just kind of periodically slips between past and present. I don't usually go for 100% when I play this game. It might seem a little unfair, but keep in mind traveling in time doesn't usually change up the layout of the levels too much. Every zone in the series has places you won't reach in every playthrough, so it's not too different from what I've been doing already. I don't think you care about the intricacies on how Metallic Madness changes between past and present. Let's get into this ranking, starting with the worst, most stinky doo-doo zone in this game. Well, it's not actually bad, it's just a whatever. Here's Stardust Speedway zone. Okay, this might be controversial, but Stardust Speedway is the worst zone in Sonic CD, and I am not grading these zones based on music. It's fine, which really makes it evident how surprisingly consistent the zones in Sonic CD are. Even Sonic 3 and Knuckles' worst zones aren't close to Stardust Speedway zone. I kinda get what they're going for with the zone. It's very energetic and high octane, but it's more of a labyrinth where you have to figure out how to progress. I like how there weren't that many enemies and it's more about traversal. In practice though, these labyrinth sections just don't feel great to figure out. They sorta use your speed against you, because taking the wrong path, either by mistake or because these launcher things had to fling you that way, costs a lot, and often feels like going fast is a burden. The big problem here is just that it doesn't flow together very well with the fast sections, and it hinders those fast sections when they might have to be repeated because progress is lost here. Something like Ice Cap Zone does the gameplay a lot better. The boss fight against Metal Sonic is pretty memorable at least. I like the part where Eggman accidentally shoots lasers at him. Although I'm not entirely sure if the segment was just memorable because Metal and Amy went on to be iconic characters. I've always felt this zone's visuals to look pretty uncanny. It's clear you're in a city, but it doesn't fully have a skyline, so it's not really clear what the speedway is. I guess the golden look is cool, so is the overgrown past, don't get me wrong, it's just strange. Very Sonic CD in its sensibilities. Stardust Speedway Zone being this low is more praise for Sonic CD as a whole than an admonishment. It's just an okay zone. I didn't like very much, but it's still iconic and it managed to return in other games and still be cool there. Even if I didn't place it very high in my Mania ranking. And by the way, I mentioned earlier the music, so I just have to say, play the game with Japanese soundtrack, always. The second worst zone in a odd turn of events is Palm Tree Panic Zone. I normally don't put opening zones this low, especially when they feel so similar to Green Hill Zone. Palm Tree Panic feels like it's missing something though, and it does a better job confusing you than introducing you to the mechanics of this game, the way an opening zone should do. For example, this was their opportunity to introduce how time travel works, and how to activate it. It wasn't really done the best. Or those rings that are inside walls. They get the player curious, but the answers aren't very satisfying. Maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh, it's mostly Green Hill Zone again, and once again, it's fun. I just think it could have been more unique to introduce the weird experience that is Sonic CD. And that problem with a lack of flow is still there to a degree. I can say one thing at least, that jump at the beginning of the zone, that was really cool. Why can't Sonic CD have more of those? At 5th place, it's Wacky Workbench. This is another example of a zone with interesting concepts where I'm kind of skeptical of the execution. For a big part of the zone, the ground is made up of terrain that will make you bounce way up to the ceiling. So that way you're supposed to platform to get across. That's not all the zone, but it's a big part, and it's definitely intended as the standout section. It doesn't always work though, and once you're up in the ceiling, the floating platforms are kind of obscured, requiring a leap of faith to get down. It's not overly annoying or anything, but by the end you'll probably be tired of it. The zone's also exemplary of some of the Sonic CD's problems with the zone's theming and aesthetic, because like the point of the zone is that it's a wacky, crazy area inside of a factory, presumably one belonging to Eggman. Metallic Madness does that way better, and overall the oversaturated colors just kind of make it hard to see at times. This is kind of just a personal thing, but I wish Sonic CD's aesthetic leaned harder into being funky and psychedelic. It seems that's what they were going for, but it didn't fully land for me. Quartz Quadrant. Quartz Quadrant. Quartz Quadrant. We're firmly in the middle, and I don't have too much to say about Quartz Quadrant Zone. It's an average Sonic zone. I don't know, it's probably one of the more forgettable parts of the game. The main gimmick is switches you press, which control the direction of a conveyor belt, but it's not used too often. I guess there's a little too many speed traps for my liking, but once again, it's not really to an annoying degree. I guess the visuals of the zone are pretty interesting. I like the glowing crystals, but with basically every zone being so multicolored, it doesn't really stand out the most. Still though, it's cool and worth pointing out. Overall, it's an alright zone, I guess. We're now in the top 3, and we start with Metallic Madness Zone. These top 3 are definitely leagues ahead of the others, and Metallic Madness was way more interesting than Stardust Speedway to see in Sonic Mania, in my opinion. It stays true to its name, offering Metallic Madness. I really enjoy the chaos here, and I think it's done better than previous zones. There's so many gimmicks like lasers that shrink you, or these tunnels that could make for unique gimmicks on their own, which combine to make for an absolute blast. It's a good concept for a final zone too, except it doesn't really feel final. It's more gimmicky than actually challenging, and the zone just would have worked way better as a penultimate zone like Sonic Mania does it. When your final challenge is such a breeze, it makes for a less good experience overall. I know that Sonic CD had some cut content, and I'm going to assume a different final boss was part of that too. Hopefully some Sonic fans who are more knowledgeable than I am can chime in on that, and give me more comment engagement. Second best zone is Collision Chaos. This is basically Sonic CD's answer to Casino Night Zone. It's the one with a ton of springs and bumpers everywhere. It's not quite as fun as other zones with this concept, but I really enjoy these kinds of zones, and they work pretty well with Sonic's physics. You get to run super fast, but there's also a need to traverse the collision chaos of it all, and figure out a way forward. Being flung around by a bunch of bumpers is fun, and I bet it feels amazing if you're a blue hedgehog who can run really fast. Also, how about we don't talk about the boss at the end? Yeah, that would be great. That leads us to the greatest, most glorious zone in all of Sonic's the Hedgehog CD. Believe it or not, it's the water one. Tidal Tempest Zone shouldn't work as best as it does. It's a water level where most of it is underwater, and there's not that many fun speedy sections. But I don't know, something about it just clicks with me. It's cool, slow, and relaxing, and the platform challenges are just easy enough to not be frustrating. It really is Labyrinth Zone from Sonic 1, but good. I didn't mention music much in previous entries, but it might just be the music that really does it for me here. It makes me feel like I'm on a journey on the ground and really exploring this area. This zone has got the one thing most other Sonic CD zones lacked: a pristine flow to the experience. I think that's what really makes it so great for me. So there we are, every Sonic CD zone ranked. I found this really interesting mostly because the zones at the bottom were surprisingly good for the worst levels in the game, and the zones at the top were surprisingly disappointing. That's not to say they're bad, it's just that all the zones in the game are either a C tier or a B tier. Maybe I can give Tidal Tempest an A tier if I'm feeling really generous, and I could definitely hear out a case for my favorite zone in this game being the worst zone, and my least favorite zone in the game being the best zone. I was surprised by how much Sonic CD avoids the usual BS level design of other Sonic Trilogy games though. I legitimately think there's a lot about those games and how they were designed that just makes them the prime examples of 90s video game BS level design, and a very distinct flavor of BS, basically just the classic Sonic games had. I do like them, don't get me wrong, it's just, look, there's a reason I'm able to rank zones. Usually it's evident what's at the bottom. That's kind of beyond the scope of this video though, but it does make me wonder how Sonic CD zones would stack up to the rest of the series. That's not foreshadowing a video I'm planning on making at all. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sonic CD has less zones than the other games I ranked on my channel, so this is kind of a smaller, easier video for me, relatively. I do have plans to rank the other Sonic games eventually, and maybe move on to modern ones too. You know, if I was smart, this would have been a ranking of Sonic X Shadow Generations. I'm actually going to go see Sonic 3, like, in a few hours after I'm recording this. So, thank you so much for watching anyways, and I'll see you later. If I get 10 comments asking me for it, I will post a video about my thoughts on Sonic 3. Got it? 10 comments by different people.